Brother in the blue shirt.
Good evening. We'll all be talking about campaign finance reform, but nobody talks about it with regard to the judiciary. So will each of you support campaign finance reform in the way we select our judges? And will you be willing to go against county leaders, Democratic county leaders in the southern part of New York, Republican county leaders to the north? Will you be willing to go against county leaders if there are issues of corruption in the selection of judges?
Mr. Coffey.
I do think we need to take a serious look at how we elect judges. And again, it's as much because of the growing cynicism about our government. I happen to think our judiciary is fabulous, by and large, both the state and the federal. So I don't really see that as having the kind of effect that we ought to be dramatically concerned about. But to the extent that people are concerned about the money in judicial races, I mean, it's getting to be a big problem across the country. The West Virginia case that went to the Supreme Court, which is a pretty good example of it. So I do think we need to take a look at it. And if I felt there was some corruption in the selection of a judicial candidate, absolutely I'd go after it.
Mr. Schneiderman.
Thank you. And then I have to run out because I'm a featured speaker up in the Bronx in supposedly 20 minutes, and I will not speak. Look, I have been working on reforming the campaign finance laws for decades. I've been through, I've organized buses of people to go to Massachusetts to get the clean election system passed up there. This is something that is a lifelong issue for me, and it's something that I'll be committed to. In the standards for the judiciary have to, if anything, be higher. But I also want to say that I have, there are laws that we can do something about. There was an outrageous case in Manhattan about someone who was lent money or given money that circumvented the campaign finance limits. I've introduced legislation on Tuesday as part of the package I did with DA Vance and others that would close that loophole and prohibit gifts for 12 months before a candidacy, prohibit this kind of loans. But again, as several have said, until we get public financing, you're playing whack-a-mole. There's always going to be people finding ways to circumvent it. Now, we can reform a lot about Albany because Albany is the Wild West. You can right now give $1 million to a party committee. That's that's like no functional limits. This is like all open season. And I do believe that what Sean said is true. I think this is the best time to be a reformer I've ever seen in Albany as my work years as an activist and as a legislator. The public, you can't reform the system when the public is not engaged, and people are engaged. And this is, we're passing rules reforms, we passed this ethics bill, we can do a lot more. But at the heart of all of this is money. And that's something, and look, you have to take away a system where the first primary you have to win in order to get elected is what's called the wealth primary, right? That is inherently a system that doesn't serve the people and that promotes corruption. It's a crime prevention program. I think the answer to this issue as well as the others, you got to have public financing. You got to have the regulations that we do have the power to impose, even under the Supreme Court's Buckley v. Vallejo decision. And we better get to it right now when this is the opportunity for reform. And I do have to go to the Bronx. Thank you very much for having me tonight, and I look forward to seeing, I've seen many of you before, and you will see me again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schneiderman. We wish you well. Ms. Wright. Folks, remember, we have to be out of the building by 9 o'clock.
It's all about campaign finance reform. Everyone up here is for it. Everyone up here will push for it. When you talk about judges, they are the backbone of the criminal justice system. And there needs to be a system in how they're chosen that is fair, not overly political, and not determined by money. I mean, look, it's in my county also, where they do fundraisers for judges, right? They can't, you can see everyone there, but they say, well, I didn't see the invitation list, so I don't know who's giving me money. Don't show me the checks that I'm getting, so that when I'm at the actual fundraiser, I can actually say, well, I don't know if this person's giving me money, I don't know if this person's giving me money. I mean, literally, that is what it's come down to. And that's absurd. That's ridiculous. And so, yes, there's room for campaign finance reform. And I also don't think that anyone up here would not take on a party boss or a county leader or whoever had to be taken on in this instance where there was evidence or proof of anything going on that was not above board. Yes, of course, I believe of us would stand up to anyone based on that. But again, it's all about campaign finance reform.
Mr. Dinello?
I agree. The only thing I would add is that in the agenda I handed out, the last point talks about Executive Law 70, which confers power on the AG to investigate election law fraud. It needs to be appointed by the governor's office, yet something else in the governor's office could appoint. It's not legislation. The governor's office could just confer this authority under Executive Law 70, and you'd get at least the kinds of investigations that you're talking about out in county judgeships if there's an election law violation.
Mr. Brodsky?
Too often, these difficult questions are responded to from panels by a restatement of the problem, rather than this is what I do. Now, in this particular case, I don't know what. I'll tell you why. Under the Supreme Court decision on corporate giving, and with the ability of individuals of great wealth to write their own checks, a badly thought through judicial campaign finance system will yield a lot of very rich, very corporate people. It will not democratize the bench. Now, when you bounce that back against what's going on now, for example, the judicial convention system versus direct election, many in the reform movement have said, let's go to direct elections of judges and abolish the convention model. That scares me a little bit, because that means that the very wealthy will come in and dominate. So here's the answer to the question. As I try to do throughout this thing, I'll tell you what I'll do, not just what I'm complaining about. I don't know. And I'll do my best to think it through with people of like mind and like intention. But I do not have a good easy answer.
Thank you.